So be quiet. Welcome everyone. This is the first ever franchise league video. Gonna review the week, talk about shit, make fun of people. Undoubtedly, have more people text me that I shat on their team when I shouldn't have, and we'll let Kenny shit on people too. Um, so agenda, we're gonna try this out, see how it goes. Steven complained that we didn't do anything cool like this, so here we are. Each week, we'll try to get somebody on here, whether it's Kenny, anyone else that wants to volunteer and sit with me for a little bit and talk through whatever is relevant that week. And being week one, we got stuff to talk about. So let's recap first week. That's awkward. There we go. That's better. Week one, Joyce. So week one, we had some things happen, especially it's a lot easier if you look at week one versus week two. Man, this first week shit's rough. So I mean, we had Jody continue the champ, stayed on it. Tyler, as we expected in the preseason stuff, got his win over Kyle. Steven pulled it out, solid, high scoring week for him. Kenny, unfortunately, pulled out a win over Tyler Wells. And then the upset of the week, Luke and Jimmy in the shitter bowl of scoring, where Luke pulled out the victory despite Jimmy getting trolled by Sleeper for a bit.
Thank you, stat corrections.
Oh, yeah. Which then got uncorrected or something. So we look at the first matchup, and gotta say, as much as I was happy to see Carson Wentz go off, I am not very high on my team for the rest of the year. But I mean, we started looking at some of the performances of Henry and Najee Harris, and I watched that game and it hurt me. Penny didn't do anything. Moore didn't do much. You know, a lot of these guys that I thought were going to be 15, 20 point guys, and Damian Harris, Stevenson, Woods, all Deontay, were all 10-ish point guys.
Those for you, Kean, having kind of Najee and Deontay as guys who were clutch for you last year. That Steelers offense, if anyone watched that game, was brutal. For what that defense just kind of manhandled the Bengals, and you didn't really get anything out of it. And then you go and lose T.J. Watt, and you're not going to get 30-yard fields all the time. It's not does not bode well for your touchdown production from your two of your bigger guys there.
No, and it was encouraging. Deontay got, you know, his balls. He got 7 receptions. He got targeted 12 times, and classic Deontay. I'm not going to put up a bunch of yards. One touchdown. That's right there. 20-point week. Um, Najee was a lot more concerning to me, where you know that line is awful, and so far Trubisky is not like Big Ben, where most of the points would come off of dumping it off to Harris and let him get the ball in space and make plays. That's rough. So, I mean, he had a touchdown and still only ended up with 10 points. And we'll see how much that changes. Hopefully it does, and they play around him. But with him coming off that injury, if knee, ankle type of thing, we'll see if he's healthy or if that slows him down a bit more.
Then you throw in that foot kind of carry over. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be good already for this week, but that
I
was
mean,
kind of they
but
kept
is
that
he?
kind of under the rug a little more than I thought they actually could through like the preseason where it kind of came out after he was healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's
Yeah.
not good, then you kind of need someone else to go on like the running back side to keep your team going since you don't really have quarterbacks that are expected to be trustworthy.
Yep. And we look on the other side. I mean, and Jody's team showed up. The guy that a lot of us shit on is we didn't think he had a very good team. Um, Although I think a lot of us thought he had a good frontline team, but if someone gets hurt, does he have the depth? But I mean, they showed up Mahomes with 35, Dalvin Cook with a pedestrian 13. Not really what you want to see out of him, but who knows what we're going to get in the new offense. But Gibson with 20 points is awesome to see. Devontae did Devontae things even in Raiderville. Mike Williams did Mike Williams things and put up 3 points. Pitts with a big disappointment. I think we'll talk about that one a lot more later as we talk into some of the tight end stuff. But I mean, Dylan with kind of what people thought with being involved in that offense and 20 points. Myers was
The
around.
yeah the kind of analysis of his team at least coming from me kind of start of the season was you've got two, three, four guys that can go off and kind of carry your team. But if they don't go off in a given week, or not enough of them go off, then that's where you can kind of have issues, or again injuries and stuff like that, where a lot of the bench isn't necessarily guys that either fill in for those guys if they leave, or at least aren't expected to. Obviously, it's fantasy football; that stuff changes all the time. But the top end pop off, go off for 1 week here or there kind of team is the same thing the team was last year. It's encouraging for him to do this and win and be one of the higher scoring teams in the league on a week where Dalvin Cook didn't do anything.
I think what was
So
encouraging too is you look at his bench and that we all kind of hated on, and he at least had a couple of the guys we weren't sure. Michael Carter puts up 17 points. That's without a touchdown. Does that if he's able to keep up a 15-point week and add a touchdown and 20-point week, you're going to be thrilled with Michael Carter, as your first guy off the bench there. And same with like Jarvis Landry, 7 for 9 for 114 is a huge week for him. Down in New Orleans. So
the the Landry, I'd be a little more optimistic about long term than Carter. Because Carter's got Brees Hall there, and then with the reception. So Carter was caught 7 of 9 targets. Brees Hall caught 6 out of 10. I don't think they're going to throw 13 receptions on 19 targets to running backs every single week. I think they were down they were down pretty early, and then just I guess couldn't
get
really
tired.
go deep where the rest of the offense didn't really do a whole lot. But
Yeah, and we'll see
who
if that
knows?
that keeps up with Flacco at the helm, or when Zach Wilson's back, does that change? Does Flacco just like checking down? So I think, it's gonna be an evolving thing as, with any rookie running back, but there's definitely a lot of encouraging things where if his team stays healthy, I think Jody's got a shot to look good, but if he has some of the injuries that some of the others in this league have suffered, it gets a little dicier if those guys don't keep it up. So
Mhm. Maybe the Jets are just the new Steelers and they're going to throw to a running back 16 times a game. You never know.
hey, if that's what happens, I want the Pittsburgh Steelers to become the new Jets because I kind of need that back. So we go to our next game. We have Tyler and Kyle. Um, we had Tyler as a favorite. Didn't put up a ton of points, but put up enough. And Kyle didn't. He had the Joe Burrow. I would have scored 40 points if I didn't throw for 5 interceptions and 97 fumbles, but still 20 points. Um,
18-point Joe Burrow is pretty good when he was, I think, like -3 at halftime or something like that.
Yeah, it
So
was it was rough. I mean, Kamara is the big question mark here. Is this the Kamara that I left out? That I was like, I want no part in this in free agency because I saw what was happening without Drew Brees there, and it wasn't, they weren't using him the way I wanted to see. Or is Kamara going to turn around? And you always have that looming court case over his head too that Roger Goodell could randomly decide fuck Alvin Kamara, which after if he keeps doing weeks like this, might help Cholo more than hurt him. So there's always
yeah, because you're never benching Alvin Kamara. Like he's on your
right.
roster, you're starting him. Like the 55-point pop off week is still there just randomly. But
Yeah, I mean James Conner kept it up from last year, gets his touchdown, gets some yards and some catches. Keenan Allen left early, but he was on pace for a decent game. Um, Sutton, I think we were expecting kind of bigger things. I know there have been a lot of rumors out of Denver that Sutton was the guy, but I mean it's a start, right? First week with
they
Wilson,
they
so
looked they looked pretty ugly overall. You take out the 67-yard Judy touchdown pass. That actual game just looked rusty. I mean, there were a lot of NFL games you watch, especially like the
oh,
Thursday night game for the Rams, or some of those teams just looked
Packers.
like, yeah, yeah, add that to the list. They just looked like they either weren't ready to play at all or weren't ready to play for most of the game.
Yep.
Even there's a couple other games like that later where you see this barrage of points at the end of the game, but there's just nothing through the start because there's just I ever see the Bengals and how Joe Burrow's first half went. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's out there. So I mean, and the rest of his roster, I mean, struggled too, but Juju puts up 11 points, loses a fumble, um, in a big game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if that's a closer game. When Juju's role being more the move the chains type of guy, does he get more catches and more play? Um, I mean, Bateman, it's always good to see. I mean, only 2 for 5, but they didn't throw the ball an absolute ton. I think there was, what do we say, like 8 receptions to their wide receivers, but they're trying to get it there. He gets the touchdown. Um,
even going down to the bench, Ayuk is supposed to be kind of hyped with the Trey Lance, but that
The
that weather
monsoon.
situation in Chicago was if when you're
Um,
squeegeeing the football field, that doesn't bode well for
yeah, when your kicker or
your
your
passing.
when your holder draws a 15-yard penalty for drying off the field before a field goal, you know there's problems. So, but, I mean, you got Chase Edmonds, kind of looked like the clear number one guy in Miami, um, down there. So I mean that's good. Yeah, things Tony. I think the Giants just hate him, so we won't talk about him anymore.
Yeah,
But
I don't know I mean, he was kind of an idiot with what was his last year? He was having like his big game and then gets himself ejected and then got
well,
hurt like right after that. I
I
think it
think he
was.
also doesn't know the playbook or something like that, or doesn't want to study or anything. Or I vaguely remember. So he's got a couple guys on the bench that are there. You know, if Devin Cook ever goes down, Madison, was being involved even with Cook there. So he's got some guys to come up. But I mean, if Kamara doesn't come out of his shell and Sutton doesn't start playing big and Juju, could be a long year for Kyle. And thank God he's got the number one, his first round pick. So
Yeah, it could get rough pretty quick. So
and
and then
Tyler didn't look great, but I mean he got Tom Brady did enough. You want that to be bigger, but you only need 108 points to win. Saquon, went for a big week one in the upset over Tennessee at 33 points. Let's go 164 yards, six catches. He's there. Swift went off and was a big factor in keeping that game up with Philly. Lamb, I mean I think there's plenty of pundits out there asking what is Lamb and what does he look like without Dak. Um,
hmm yeah,
Lots
what
of
does that whole
questions.
offense look like without him?
Yeah, I mean it didn't look
Waddle
great with him, so what is it gonna look like without him? You know,
Waddle's
Waddle.
still getting his with Tyreek Hill there, not getting just
And
kind of
he's
pushed to the
explosive,
side.
right? So I mean, because that was really the long touchdown that he got there. So, if you take that out, we're dropping what 12 points, 10 points off of his total. But I mean, that's kind of the Jalen Waddle thing is you're explosive, you get those long plays, right? I mean, Waller put up 11. I think we got to watch what happens with Adams. In that offense, how much does Waller get? But they just paid him, so I assume something.
Yeah, he's still got to be the number two guy. Like it's
Hmm.
not, if you look, Renfro didn't really do a whole lot. Um, they hate Josh Jacobs. Still not sure why, but it's like that's got to be the guy. So
Yep. Mooney in the monsoon. Judy, you talked about the long touchdown. We'll kind of
hmm
see. I think we all expect that offense to kind of take over more, and do a little bit more. And then you had Rodgers who, had kind of a rough game, a fumble, interception. Under 200 yards. You expect that to bounce back, even with the younger receivers. Getting Lazard back will help. But I mean, looking down the roster, Mac Jones had a rough game. Um, he didn't really get much done out there when you expect him to be better. Akers barely played. But James Robinson, that's we'll just see if what
the
that looks
the
like.
allegedly number two guy.
The number two, number one guy, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
we'll see what that turns into. Lazard.
Lazard coming back.
We'll see when he gets back. Devonte Smith, I don't know what the fuck that was, but that was a thing. I mean Drake London with
That's
12
that's really
points.
not that's really not what you want to see. Have your offense go off for 38 points and you don't catch a pass.
Yeah, unless
It's
you're an
not.
AJ Brown owner, then you're really thrilled. But I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't see AJ Brown on this roster, so I'm gonna go with he's
yeah,
not
not
too
super
happy
thrilled.
about it.
Dotson, with two touchdowns in his first game is a huge boost for possibly some rookie stuff. Hawkinson and Fant, just didn't. I mean, Fant, I don't know how much you expect him to do with Geno Smith, but Hawkinson, you keep hoping he's going to kind of step up and do more. And they scored 35 points, and Hawkinson gets 4 for 38. Right? That's
Yeah.
you know
Even
this.
you go back to the rookie receiver stat line, those three guys he's got there look a lot better if the third guy here knows how to catch the first pass of the game. So
Yeah, like a catch that I could have made type of shit. Yeah, I couldn't have got open, but I could have caught it. I'm sure. I mean, you look down. All right, next one. Then you got Steven. Steven beats James, and I mean, this was kind of the tough luck one where I mean, James puts up, you know, what fifth highest points, 140, a solid score, and just happens to run into Steven. With Everyone kind of did their part for him. Nothing's crazy here. Cup did Cup things. Mixon with 20, Chubb with 15, Hurts 25. McLaurin's kind of the question mark. He got that one touchdown, but with Dotson there and Curtis Samuel kind of stepping up, and Wentz, what does that continue to look like, or
Yeah,
was that just the joys of playing Jacksonville?
yeah. The only thing there that kind of looks well, the two things if you look through look a little out of whack are either the CEH, although week one CEH is a thing, um, and then
22.
obviously the Dak with the Cowboys. Even
Mm-hmm.
in a bad game for what's considered easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, you don't expect to have 5 points at the end of the game.
Yeah, even through
Um,
what 3 quarters or so before he got hurt.
is
You know,
about 3.5. Yeah, like you don't. Um, yeah,
I mean,
that's
if
stunning,
this,
especially for Steven. Then he doesn't really have that next guy to fill that Dak spot where you're looking at now instead of having a quarterback in that super flex, you're looking for who's the next running back I got, who's the next
yeah, I mean, you're
receiver I
looking
got,
at
which
Cordero Patterson. You're hoping he keeps it up, and before they decide they
Mhm.
hate him in the end of the year like last year. Other than that, you're kind of like Tyler Boyd. As the third receiver in Cincinnati, what's that going to look like? And I think from watching the games, look like they're willing to run 4 receivers out there. They had
Mhm.
the other Mike Williams who was pretty active in the game and getting balls thrown to him. So, what's that look like?
They're yeah, they were still running a lot of four wide receiver even after Higgins got hurt.
Hmm.
So those are kind of the formations it seems like they want to run. So
So I mean, Boyd could be valuable and he could not be. I mean, I think that's kind of the joys. Is the guy with Higgins and Jamar Chase. I have to play both of them because I don't know which one's going for 50 and which one's going for 5. So if I just assume they both get 25, I'm okay. And Gerald Everett had a good game. He got a touchdown. 3 for 54 isn't bad. So I mean, he's got a couple options to fill the holes, but yeah, I mean, one injury to Jalen Hurts and he's either. I mean, he's done, right? For 6 weeks,
you're
he doesn't have the assets to really go acquire anything. He's lacking picks unless someone really wants a third rounder. So
yeah, and otherwise you're trading away. You have to trade away like long term players or something,
or a
which there
big
aren't a ton
name.
of, or
I
something
mean,
that
you're
are
trading
then
away one of your starters, right? To
yeah, yeah, you're trading away some other position player to try to go get a quarterback. So um, it gets rough trying to make that sort of in season trade. So and then
then
James on the other side, you got Lamar, standard kind of Lamar there. Um, Actually, not necessarily standard point total,
I
but
mean,
not you're not going to expect only less than 20 yards rushing from Lamar for a game. I don't think Lamar is going to decide to just be a pocket passing quarterback for the rest of his career.
no, but if you get 20 out of your quarterback, you're pretty happy. As the
Mm-hmm.
guy that prays every day that my quarterbacks will think about coming close to 20, 20 is a great number. So I mean, so I think Lamar's 20 is fine. The McCaffrey only getting 15 was a little concerning. Your team puts up
Mm-hmm.
24 points and your focal point is 15 and that's with a touchdown. So that how they incorporate him and keep using him will be interesting. I have some concerns there, although it's still McCaffrey, so I assume it's a 1 week thing and we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
But
you give it enough time, he'll find a way. Like he's just too explosive. If he's on the field,
yeah,
stuff's going to break at some point.
yeah. I mean,
AJ Brown having a good
AJ Brown,
good game in a new offense. He didn't really know how.
yeah,
We
10
kind of talked about Devontae
10 for
Smith already.
13 for 155 is a pretty damn good stat line, for your first game on a new team. So that's all good. I mean, tight end might be a problem. I mean, he found Gabe Davis. They were hitting Gabe Davis up, 88 yards, touchdown. And if he becomes that kind of second guy on that Buffalo offense, you're pretty damn happy with how Josh Allen's throwing the ball. And
Mm-hmm.
Fournette did his part, and Trey Lance in a monsoon. We'll see what that looks like. He looked good rushing the ball, but what does that look like when we get a little bit sunnier? Does it give him more lanes, less lanes? Some of that. So
It's about the worst September weather condition you could put a quarterback in for his first game. Here you go.
yep,
You got unsure footing. You can't grip the ball, and your receivers might fall down as they run their routes. Here you go. So,
yeah.
oh,
Unfortunately, I mean
and
he's got
your starting running back gets hurt in the second quarter.
right. I mean, that's he's got Gino and Daniel Jones both put up nice weeks. 16, 17 points isn't bad for guys on your bench. Kareem Hunt, had the 2 touchdowns that kind of buoyed his score here, but he's staying involved as we all kind of expected. Duvernay with 2 touchdowns. So what is that fluky week one, or is that going to continue with him getting, you know, shots there? Um, you know,
All three
some of the rookie
Lamar
stuff.
touchdowns went to receivers. So
Yeah, kind of rookie wide receivers, 8 points, kind of what you expect. They're going to ramp up as the year goes on, hopefully. Um, but I mean, tight end is the big issue.
eight points for Dubs in that Packers game is really encouraging for how bad that offense looked.
When how
You
little
know,
he really got targeted too. I mean, he caught 4 of 5. You know,
yeah.
so we'll see. I mean, the big question, James, kind of going forward is, I mean, your tight ends combined for all of 1.6 points, right? Like that's not exactly a reassuring. I can get 10 points out of that spot when that's what you're looking at. So,
hmm
all right, now on to you and T Wells. I think your team, although it tried to make you worry, Herbert looked
I
okay.
was worried.
JT JT decided the fourth quarter looked pretty damn good to start, doing something and putting up his points. But you had Mitchell went out early. Jefferson did Jefferson things. We don't need to fucking cover him with a good cornerback. Fuck that. Pittman looked really good
Or
for
anyone
or
on some
anyone
plays.
sometimes. Pittman looked good for 9 of 13, 121 is a good scoreline. Even had the touchdown, so that's encouraging with Matt Ryan there. Jasicki didn't do anything. Welcome to owning Mike Jasicki. Etienne, as we talked about James Robinson, what does that continue to look like? How does that evolve? Is the big question there.
The
Um,
game wasn't on for that one, but that was when I remember looking. We're like towards the end of the first half. All right, he's got like actually I think it was literally this. I think he had the 4 carries, 2 catches, 60 yards, 8 points, like feeling good, and then like barely touches the ball the rest of the game
James
as the
Robinson
guy that
happens.
was like, he's supposed to be the number one guy in the offense. Robinson had already been leading in touches throughout the day, but just where that kind of went in the second half is, well, for me, a little concerning and interesting just in how that dynamic's going to go. But um, Allen Robinson, I'm sure most people watched the first game of the year. That Rams offense just looked
It's gonna be an
terrible.
evolution too, right? You have a new guy coming in. What does it look like, and what does it look like to be opposite? Cooper Kupp. Robert Woods was used to it. So how does that look like? How do they get on the same page on stuff? So that's probably an
There was
evolution where we may not know until week 3, 4, 5.
there's one play there that has like the owner worries me a little bit because it was when Stafford ran for like it might have been a fourth down, or a short third. Um, and Allen Robinson's literally like 10 yards up the field with no one within 10 yards of him, and he runs for 2 yards instead of just tossing him the ball. It makes you worried you don't trust the guy or you're what, because you're staring right at him, just like literally straight in front of him. But so concerns me as a Robinson owner that he's just tunneled too much on Kupp or something after all the success they had last year. But
Yep.
um,
I mean Wilson, you got to be happy with. I mean their team looked rough, but he put up 340. If they get in the end zone a couple more times as they get down there, you're looking at a mid 20 point week.
they had
So
3 drives inside the 10 that didn't score touchdowns. So
yeah.
you convert 1 or 2 of those into a pass, and you got a real nice looking week. So
Winston scored 19 points in the fourth quarter. That's really encouraging. He really was that close to an 80-point week if he just, played like that. Henderson, lost Mitchell, but having Henderson be looking like the number one guy right now is encouraging for fill that hole for you. I know in
mm-hmm.
preseason we kind of talked of, you know, you're gonna need someone to step up if you get hurt, and we joked that it would be the San Francisco guy, and then it came true because it always is the San Francisco guy. So I mean, Brees Hall with
It's
the
something
10
in the water,
points.
man. They just can't keep their legs together out there.
Yeah, I mean, you got Brees Hall. I think we spent all last year talking about how Javante was great for me because I just wanted 10 points out of him, and that's all you need. Then Brees Hall might get you that. What does Walker do if he gets healthy versus Penny? We'll see. Is Henderson, where does he play? Um, Somehow everyone on the Browns did poorly despite winning. I don't really understand that, except for, I guess, Kareem Hunt, who got 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Um, DK gets the catches, so it's different from old Russell Wilson. Now he gets the catches, but not the yards, I guess. So
Yeah, they were really kind of funneled into like we're gonna make sure we get the ball in his hands and go from there. Is what I think. If you look back the stats, you had looked it up at one point. Like the number of games where he had more than 5 catches with Wilson was not very high.
Yeah, PPR was
Kind
not
of
his
boom or
jam.
bust.
He was a
Uh,
standard scoring guy. So I mean,
uh,
and you look farther down. I mean, Olave and Wilson getting their 10 points. That's progress for young guys. Julio, you know, um, apparently he can tackle. So we you got that. I mean, he lost Kittle for hopefully just the week, but we'll see when he gets back.
yeah, missed practice again today. So
Yeah,
that
I wish you luck.
yeah, yeah. We'll
Yep.
just be there at playoff time. All right, we'll just be there at playoff time. I'll just rely on the 5 big dogs to roll enough because they're clearly all going to put up 23 plus points every week. And
Surely you can count on that.
yeah,
Book it.
yeah, yeah.
And T. Wells, I think had a good week. Unfortunately, ran into you um, instead of like me or Jimmy or Luke. But I
Mhm.
mean, Carr a little lower than we would have
Yeah.
expected, but Sanders did solid things. Pierce was lower. I thought that would be a better score line for him, especially with the game plan I thought they'd run. But I mean, Cooks did Cooks things. Always wide receiver two numbers. Michael Thomas turned it on with the 2 late touchdowns to build his week. Kelsey did Kelsey things until they got up by 97 points.
If
Um,
on Michael Thomas, if that ends up being kind of the Michael Thomas of old you get there, that may very quickly become one of the most valuable contracts in our league. Just
right.
kind of everyone was so down on that at the draft, myself included. You haven't seen the guy for a year and a half or whatever it was. You never know what they're going to come back as. So really encouraging there for kind of the team this year and for kind of the future from a team that him coming in was pretty stripped down. If you hit on that, and Damian Pierce already kind of looking to be one of the better rookie running backs in terms of just opportunities.
The opportunity
It's
wise
kind
is
of a
there. I
nice.
mean, didn't turn it into anything this week, but maybe that's a 1 week thing. But Debo, expect you're going to get better performance from when it's not a monsoon. He had the lost fumble that hurt too. Chark. I don't know if Detroit's going to score 35 points every week, but if he does, you know, Chark for 15 points isn't a bad spot to be at for that offense. Tua
Yep.
with 14, you would have liked to see with a 20-7 win. You would have hoped a little bit more, but it's 15 points.
It's also facing New England. Bill Belichick is kind of notorious for just screwing with young quarterbacks. So still
Yep.
getting still getting the win, not making any errors, no picks, no fumbles. Kind of bodes well for the future potentially.
Tannehill with almost 20. It was a pretty ugly game. What does that turn into? We've seen Ryan Tannehill be a league winner a couple of years ago for me. And then last year not as much for James. So what Tannehill are we gonna get? Jamal Williams vulturing touchdowns from everyone on the Detroit team. Like, does that keep up? Can you play him like the New England running backs of old, where you just start their third string running back because he was guaranteed 2 carries for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be James White, who should have been a Super Bowl MVP,
Should have
but
been. Yeah, rigged. Robbie
screwed
Anderson,
already.
five or eight, 102 and a touchdowns, pretty good numbers. Um, I won't talk about this shitter. We'll pretend. Uh, I'll believe that when I see it. I mean, Tunyon. I think he's when I look at guys that on Green Bay, I think he could be a major factor going forward as kind of the relief valve. Uh, so if
He
they get
wants to he
protection,
wants to go there. That towards the end of the game, that fourth down throw into the end zone,
hmm
that was Tunyon no matter what the coverage was, because that was
right,
not the coverage to throw that. Like, I'm staring at this, it's going there. I'm just gonna. That was a Rodgers. I hope I can put this in the right spot and he can make a play on it, which kind of I don't think he really trusts anyone other than
right,
Tunyon
it's
and
only Tunyon.
Cobb and that offense right now.
So
So
I mean, once they get their tackles back, I think you could really boom for him. And then
yeah,
the shitty bowl of the week, you got Jimmy and Luke. Um, Allen somehow scores like a 30 or points out of 9 players. Eckler kind of a down game for Eckler standards. Jones kind of down. I mean, the whole team was kind of down, but I mean, the production and how they were using the running backs is positive. You had those running backs combined for 30 points. It just kind of be how you're going to divvy that up. You know, if you
it's
get
kind of like
touchdowns, that
your
goes up to 40. You know,
your same Bengals Bengals problem.
Hmm.
You've got both of them, but yeah, one who's going to be the guy. It was that 2 years ago when I was running Melvin Gordon
Yeah,
and
Eckler.
Eckler in one league because it's just the bad guy's going to get 10, the other guy's going to get more, and you just
Right.
take
You're just
both and
okay
just
with it.
roll with
Yep.
it.
Tyreek looked pretty good. I mean, 8 for 12. On your first time with a new quarterback who's more accurate than Patrick Mahomes, always a good sign. Thielen a little bit quiet, but I suspect when defensive coordinators have a brain and double Jefferson, Thielen will get some more play.
Just cover Jefferson at all.
Yeah. Andrews, I mean, weird week for tight end. He got his 10 points. It's not bad. You know, it's kind of the
but
floor
not
you hope out of him. But
not what you're looking for from the guy that was kind of the consensus analyst number one tight end for this year, was the number one tight end last year.
mm-hmm.
He put up 300 points, I think it was last season, to then kind of come out and just
10's
drop
rough.
a 10 out there in a game where your offense still puts up 24 points. Really isn't what you're hoping for there.
Yeah, I mean, Lockett, kind of rough. You didn't know what you're going to get with Geno. DJ Moore continues to do DJ Moore things and disappoint everyone that's high on him. Stafford looked pretty rough. I'll be happy to take him off your hands for free, Jimmy, if you want to get rid of that contract. I know it's really, really brutal. Um, Matt Ryan somehow threw 32 passes and only scored 15 points. So that happened. Um, they eventually figured out how to score, though. So, hopefully they get their shit figured out. McKissick was okay. Not a whole lot of really stuff to write home about with most of these scores, which is a little concerning,
Uh,
for his depth, you know.
and having the Godwin injury thrown in there too.
Hmm.
He didn't start him in this case, but that's a guy you might have been hoping to come in and replace that DJ Moore, who just that disappoints everybody. I don't even
Mostly
have
did.
faith in him, and he disappoints me.
Hmm.
Um, that's Godwin was a guy. If I'm Jimmy, I'm looking for later in the year to kind of step up, but those hamstring injuries sometimes linger.
Yep.
Um, and then you just kind of got your tight ends at the bottom there, just doing mediocre tight end things.
Which for not paying top tight end money is fine. He's Andrew's still only $28. It's not awful to get 10 points out of him, but it's you're hoping to get 15, 20 out of him.
Yeah, you're hoping for the upside play where
Yeah,
another
he's supposed to be a
potentially
tight
really
end
valuable
one, tight end,
contract.
number one tight end, number two tight end. So I mean, I think that'll go up. And Luke, I mean, gets his win. I think that like doubled his win total from the last like 2 years combined. But um, Kyler, 20 points. Zeke. I mean, the big question mark coming in: what does Zeke look like? And the answer is they didn't do much, but that offense didn't get anything going. So what does it look like when that offense gets, rolling a little better?
Yeah.
Monty and a monsoon. There was a lot of trading off with him and Herbert, but I don't know how much was a monsoon or how much of that's their new game plan. So it's hard to draw conclusions off of that shit show. But I mean,
Some of the reports were like they didn't think he fit their offense or whatever. But if you looked at watching that game, no running back fits the offense where they don't get to the line of scrimmage untouched. Like it's not going to matter who it is if that's the 49ers just kind of had their way up front.
the
So
the Joe Mixon 2019 problems. Yep.
yeah,
You got, I mean, Marquise Brown. 4 for 43 and a touchdown. You know, they were behind the whole time,
decent
and
debut game, but for not having Hopkins, you'd like to see a little bit more in terms of like targets or catches there.
yep.
Um,
So I mean, that's a thing. Did they lose somebody else too? I mean, Ertz got banged up a little bit, right?
uh, Ertz came. Ertz was a potential like might not play or might have like a snap count, but is later afternoon game. So, um,
Who's they?
uh, but he ended up playing. It was Wandale Robinson got hurt, but I believe that was Giants,
Oh,
not
Rondale
right.
Moore. Well,
Oh, Rondale Moore
Wandale
got
got
hurt.
hurt, but Rondale Moore, that's what I was thinking of. Rondale Moore got hurt, which, should have given Marquise Brown opportunities more. But, I mean, St. Brown continued to be a revelation for Luke, which is big. Knox had a not un-Knox like game. We'll see what that continues. The Steelers kind of
Touchdown
struggled.
regression.
Um, but Christian Kirk, after paying him for 17 years now, Luke is finally seeing some value out of the Christian Kirk thing.
New
Fields
hotness.
Fields was okay. Mills looked pretty good. He got him out to a 20-point lead. So I mean, there's maybe something there. maybe
Paid
not.
3 times on Luke's roster, David Mills.
Yep. I mean Pollard. I mean it's the same thing we talked about with Zeke, where he's got both of them, and the dream is they turn into the Eckler Gordon thing you had a couple years ago, where you start them both. Right now, I'm not sure you start either, but like I said, who knows what this looks like? We need to learn more. Singletary looked decent. He got his 8 carries. Um, it didn't seem like James Cook is the answer, so he doesn't really have a threat there. So that's looking good. I mean, similarly, there's not a whole lot of great depth here. I know Cole Komet, how do you pronounce it? I'm sure I butchered it. Didn't do shit. But once again, monsoon. But we'll see. So yeah, I mean, they both kind of deserve their scores. Jimmy's got a little bit more of hope just because he's got quarterbacks and stuff to deal with. But I mean, we'll see what they come into. So, but yeah, I mean, we talked about some of that stuff. As we start looking at some of the injuries we talked about, we're looking at Elijah Mitchell, about 8 weeks or so. Um, is
At,
kind of
at
a
minimum,
blow.
they threw him on IR, so it's at least they're looking at 8 weeks.
But
So sucks for me. It sucks for him. A second year guy trying to be healthy, and it's looked really good when he's been on the field, but it's kind of the same problem Mostert had in the past, where if you can't stay on the field, it doesn't matter if you break a 40-yard run every third carry. If you only get 4 carries, it doesn't go anywhere. It was what, 6 for 41s. You're averaging almost 7 yards a carry.
yep. So I mean, he looked good. So I mean, we'll see what that comes back. Obviously, as we said, it kind of hurts you. You got to figure out if you're just have to rock a 10-point rookie running back and hope that your other studs pick up the pieces. You look at Dak. We talked about that being a brutal blow for Steven. He's out, 6 to 8 weeks, and Steven could start Jordan Love and hope the Packers get blown out every week for the garbage time 2 points. But or you're starting a non-quarterback at super flex. So I don't know anyone in the league that does that. Anyone, definitely not me. So
Right.
this.
Javante.
Yep, Javante for life.
And then kind of Cooper Rush and how that affects kind of everybody else throughout that Cowboys offense. It was the number one offense in football last year. That now, as a backup quarterback, what does it do to Lamb? What does it do kind of to those running
Running
backs?
backs.
They had Tolbert had kind of come in as like, oh, this is the rookie who might have a thing, and then ends up not even being active for the game. As a Cowboys fan, for the love of God, activate him next week. It can't be worse than the players that were there. Like,
Yeah,
hell,
it's
I might be able to go run some routes for how that offense looked with Dak, and now kind of without.
yeah. I
It
mean,
kind
we
of
look at
trickles all the way through.
you start looking at the wide receivers. Keenan Allen. How long is that gonna bother him or keep him out? And so for Cholo, that kind of hurts. Another guy that doesn't have a ton of depth. He needed Keenan Allen to be a guy for him. And you know, on the other hand, Jody's hoping Mike Williams gets some of that play, right?
That
Hopefully.
kind of boom that was big for Jody when he went on his run to start last year. If he can get that kind of boom in Mike
Get
Williams back, potential big boom for there. We're looking at rankings at the start of the year for a team where you go from, Keenan Allen's there and he's going to be the guy. Like, that at the end of the day, eventually it's going to be him. You can have your games there, where now if he's not there, he's limited by kind of a nagging hamstring. Really opens up that for Mike Williams, and then gives Jody a little bit more depth, which is kind of, like we said, the knock on his team to start the year.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, Godwin, hamstring thing was kind of bothering him come in, bothered him more in the game. So for Jimmy, it's just brutal. He doesn't really have that depth, other than that quarterback. But when you look at, Steven and you, when Steven's got Mike Evans, you've got Julio, like it's kind of a big boost for you guys where, there might be more play. Um, maybe more on the Julio side than Mike Evans, where Mike Evans might get more focus with Godwin being out, but it's something got to work through. But so for Jimmy, it's brutal with just doesn't have the depth at wide receiver that he'd like to have, I'm sure. So I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely more of a Julio boon than than Evans. And you could tell they really wanted to get Julio involved, forcing him jet sweeps and stuff. Is
Yep.
what his first carry since 2019, I guess.
Yeah, they're the only
Um,
team I've ever seen have a 40-year-old run an end around. So that's
like Mike Evans is just going to do Mike Evans things either way. He's going to have his random 40-point week of the year at some point, whether Godwin's there or not, and he's going to be their red zone guy where they ran that player. It's just, yep, we're just throwing it up to you. Just go push the guy out of the way and catch the ball and take our touchdown. So
yeah. I think as we move on to kind of like waiver claims, I think there was a couple. I mean, Hilliard obviously went for big money. He had a couple of big plays, out of the backfield. Henry had kind of a poor day. What does that continue to look like? Um, I'm pretty confident Jimmy's not picking up that option year, but if Hilliard can have even a semblance of that play, was a good value back to have there as a receiving back for Tennessee. Curtis Samuel, if Wentz keeps it up, we could see something valuable out of him. It's kind of we think he's the third option, but I mean he still scored pretty well for the number three wide receiver in Washington, which before this year there was one and barely one, and now you might have three receivers you might consider starting.
yeah, not
Maybe.
with a quarterback that's now been traded in consecutive like seasons. Like that's
But
not
it's not
not
what
how
we
you
saw coming.
expect. Yeah, and the third receiver being a guy that was just kind of let go from Carolina. Like
Yep.
it's it's a
A guy that even
confusing
made DJ Moore look good.
situation.
Like
Yeah, that's hard to do.
he looks somewhere like Cooper Rush. Obviously someone was gonna pick him up. Hoping that he figures his stuff out or they scheme around it. I'm not sold, but you never know. Sterling Shepard.
Hey,
I
if
don't.
you listen to Rex Ryan, they need to trade 2 first-round picks for Tyler Huntley out of Baltimore because that makes any freaking sense.
Well, somebody didn't because we dropped him. So, but I mean Sterling Shepard. Giants wide receiver. If you can ever figure who the Giants wide receiver is, more power to you because I can't. So if you find the one and they use them, I think we've seen in years past Sterling Shepard look great. We've seen times Kenny Galladay used to look good. Um, you know,
They've
we've
all
had.
they've all had a ton of health issues. Like they stay about as healthy as 49ers running backs do. So,
I mean, even a couple years
um,
ago, Darius Slayton. It was just kind of like who's the guy, and you don't know. Um, but I mean, it could
I
be the
think some
same.
of that just goes to Daniel Jones not being a
Yeah.
reliable quarterback. So,
And he had, Pacheco gets picked up for $4. He got some play in Kansas City. How much of that's going to be because they blew Arizona out, or how much is that, to spell CEH? We'll see. Um,
most of the touches and yards were late, but it was um, very explosive. Where you had 62 or 60 yards of his 62 in the fourth quarter when it's kind of garbage time run out the clock. But I think it was 8 touches or something like that for 60 yards. That's something you can do that you might get more of a role there. CAH is I know better than anyone. Never exactly been the most consistent performer.
yep.
Um, so
I mean, they've talked him up, so I mean, we'll see. Taysom Hill, if I mean he got play and he did things in that crazy tight end market. So who knows what that New Orleans offense continues to look like. And then
uh,
finally Jalen Warren getting picked up. You know, all depends if Najee misses time and they figure out how the fuck to use a running back. You could see him being useful. Otherwise, you know, you have a roster spot in a few weeks when you cut him. So
yep.
that I mean, going from there into some of the timeshares we talked about a little bit. You look at like the Lions. That Swift had a huge day, and Jamal Williams had a huge day. But Jamal Williams with the two touchdowns to anchor all of his stuff. Does that where does that fall? You know,
Yeah, where does that offense fall out? It's looks you go by touches and stuff like that. It looks like a pretty 50-50 time split there. But if we've talked about a few different teams where you thought they could have been the start both running backs type teams. And maybe it's just the Lions. The
yeah. I mean, this
Swift gets his yards.
yeah. Does
Williams much more
does
touchdown
Williams keep
dependent.
stealing the touchdowns? Is he like I said the old New England running back? I'm here. Um, like Garrett Blunt. That's what I was thinking of. Like Garrett Blunt. I'm here for 2 carries for 2 yards and two touchdowns. Like, is that Jamal Williams? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold. Jamal Williams ain't my guy, but I'm a big fan of Swift. I mean, same thing on the other end of the spectrum. You got the Cowboys who both looked like shit. because the whole offense looked like shit. So
That kind of coming into the season, I was pretty high on Pollard as like a Cowboys fan, and the potential of like both of them both being on the field at the same time, or Pollard kind of taking that kind of receiving back type role a little bit more, stuff like that. Um, Watching the game, I'm a little concerned about that. There were a couple, if you're going to be on the field for passing downs and stuff like that, or even down the road if they part with Zeke after his contract this year, if you're going to be the guy, he just got blown up or missed blocks completely in the backfield. Just some of like the hits that Dak took. Um, so like that's kind of concerning that way. If you're going to be that guy, you got to put a body on someone, or you're just it's going to be rough, and then you're not going to get those receptions that would kind of get you the points to keep that two back thing going. Um, Overall, for by Cowboys standards, playing the Buccaneers the last few years, their running game actually looked decent. I think last year Elliott had like 20 yards
right,
throughout the entire game, so just kind of always a bad matchup for the Cowboys. Actually, had some people ask me about this, but I didn't expect us
right.
to run well because that's
So,
kind of the meat of that Buccaneers defense.
still
Um,
something to monitor though as we move into the seasons of does Pollard take over, and last year he looked more explosive than Zeke, but we'll see. I mean, when we move into like the Jags, it's early on Etienne was the thing, and then Robinson gets the touchdowns and carries over. So I think you know both could be viable. It might be settled with similarly. Is it going to be we're running both guys, or are we going to start running the hot hand and you know the one starts dominating for a little bit before the other one takes over? What happens? I don't know if I
hot
want to
hand,
own either.
hot hand is the least favorite word of any fantasy football owner because I want to know
Unless your
when
guy
my
has the hot
guy's going to
hand,
get
and then you'd
touches.
love it.
Well, but you don't. If it's a hot hand and you don't know which guy it's going to be going into the game, you don't feel confident starting that guy week
Right.
in and week out. That 10-point running back thing. Well, I'm not going to trust that Etienne's going to get 9 points with 6 touches every week.
Right. That
Um,
gets rough.
that's the case. He should probably get more than 6 touches. But
You would think, but James Robinson with the win. You can suck a dick, Kenny.
mhm.
Um, on the other positive side, you got the Packers where they're Dillon and Jones are both involved to various amounts, like 20 points and 10 points, 10, 20, and 15. Um, so they're both involved. I think in a more offensive, offensively positive game for the Packers. I think you see those points jump up. It's kind of what I expected the Packers to do is rely on getting the ball to those guys in the offense. So I mean that's encouraging for any owner of them.
The interesting part there to me was you had Dillon almost double the touches for Jones, twice the carries and two more catches. Looking at 15 to 8 for touches. Not kind of how I would have expected that to kind of balance out throughout the game, and just especially since Jones came out as the starter, is the guy. You watch Packers games, he still looks like he should be the number one guy, and then you just have these drives where it's just all right, we're just going to keep feeding Dillon, where they just kind of seem to spread Jones around a little bit more instead of just we're going to give you the ball 4 times in a row and you keep getting first downs. So
Yeah, big questions. And on the bad side, I mean, you got the Bills. Montgomery was okay, but I mean, you won a big game, and you know, we look at it, and James Cook had a shitty game. Zach Moss didn't do anything super notable. Montgomery had 8 points. We're not. It's kind of a get the heck out of Dodge type of thing for owning those guys. It seems like, and the Rams weren't too far behind either. With Henderson put up 10 points. They had a rough offense, but Akers, where does he factor in, or does he? They bring him along slow. You know,
three carries for 0 yards is not what I expected out of that for Akers. As far as I knew, he was healthy and ready to go. Um, I guess the Rams don't think it, or they suddenly don't like him. So either way, not what a lot of people thought coming into the season. They expected him to kind of have a big bounce back year, actually being healthy. Um, so
yeah, we'll see. I mean, we just talked about 6 teams with committee joys, and not even the ones that are like had successful-ish things. Where you got Denver, where it's I've got both of them. I'm kind of okay with it because we'll see what happens, but you know it's becoming more and more dominant in fantasy football as you got to deal with committee stuff and figure it out. So I think Yeah, I mean, timeshares, it's fun. So when we start looking at our next little segment, so that maybe people are still asleep at this point, or still awake at this point. I mean, I think a real overreactions. Um, I'll let you weigh in on my statements here of is Jody a top two team in the league after his performance this week?
I would say no, but I put him in like the top two for like teams that could pop off and just go big because he's got the star power there. But week in and week out, where you get through the middle of the NFL season, where you need some of that depth through weeks or different bye weeks. If you get, I don't know what the bye weeks are. If you're missing Mahomes, you're missing Adams. Your fill-in guys for those aren't. They're not going to put up 30 points reliably. And kind of carry that offense. Now, if they kind of do what they're supposed to do, then you can be a playoff team there for sure. But I don't think that's you're going to call that a top two team in the league, just off of 1 week.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've seen this year a lot is when we look across teams, like there's the depth isn't there, you know, and I think there's a couple teams that have a little bit. I think my team has depth. I also have a lacking in star power, right? Like I have no quarterbacks that I can really trust unless Wentz continues. Like otherwise, I've got Chase, and everyone else kind of disappointed. If Henry isn't a 20-point guy, if Najee isn't a 20-point guy a week, my team's not good. It ain't looking good. God
And you're
help me, SOS, please, somebody. I need
you're
help.
putting up 130, 140, and hoping the other team doesn't do enough. So I
Yeah,
think
it's one of those.
our
You start
average our
playing not
average
to
week to week's
lose.
been 145 or so, I think, for this league. So
Yeah, you put
if
up
you're
150,
floating,
you're looking really good. As the numbers I've kind of played around as the team that put up 140 a whole lot last year, I'm quite familiar with it. Um, but yeah, it gets starting into playing the. You're almost playing not to lose and hope the other team sucks, rather than being like, yeah, I'm about to go kick your shit in, you know. So
so you're saying you're looking to make some beer bitch bets if someone wants to reach out to you.
yeah, but I need to make them and then I'll make trades before playing Steven. Just make sure I can solidify that like a couple years ago. Um, all right, next one for you is T Wells' team with the performance he had. Is it a solid lock to be a playoff team?
I wouldn't go lock, but kind of how some of the things have trended does look a lot better. If he gets the Michael Thomas of old, if Damian Pierce actually becomes a starter, and that offense kind of becomes functional. Obviously, he had double digit carries. Their offense didn't do a whole lot, so he didn't do a lot with it. Um, that the Eagles decided that Miles Sanders is allowed to step foot in the end zone with the football in his hands. Um, if some of that stuff goes the right way, and then Kelsey and Debo are going to be Kelsey and Debo, you can kind of get there, and kind of get into that playoffs, and then who knows from there. You get to the trade deadline, and you do who knows what that we've seen over the last couple of years, depending on the buy small or the go all in, like a couple people did last year. Then you can try and shake something up. But just there's been a few things from kind of when we did the draft back in June to now that kind of kept um, going his way. So um, not the kind of pushover the team was the last couple of years. Um, I
No,
can say from
it's
experience as the
it's
guy
looking
who was
up.
like, what's going on, as I'm watching the third quarter end of that Colts game before Pittman and Taylor
Mhm.
decided to find the end zone and remember who they are. So
Yeah, I mean it's looking up for him for sure. All right, we got the next one. Is Saquon a top five running back this year?
is Saquon healthy for the entire year? I
Can't.
mean,
It's
you get
hard. It's hard to end up as a top five running back without staying healthy the whole year.
like you got the explosiveness. I mean, Derrick Henry was still in the top five like 4 weeks after he got hurt last year, but
Yeah, I need that.
um,
That'd be great. I need
it's you're
the
kind of seeing
points.
some of the explosiveness back there that had kind of been missing the last few years when he did actually play. So I think 164 yards off the top of my head is probably his highest yardage total by a decent amount in the last couple
Mhm.
of years, and that if that team's going to win, like it's not going to be the receivers, it's not going to be Daniel Jones. It has to be Saquon. So he's gonna get his touches, that's for sure. So if he can stay healthy, then I'd be surprised if he's not a top 5 back if he plays every game this year. I'd be very surprised, especially with the start where you're already kind of jumping out in front there.
Yeah, I already got one text saying thank you for trading me Saquon Barkley, so that feels good deep down inside. And since we're on the talk but of bad trades, is CEH this year's Cooper Cup trade?
I hope not.
We,
watching week 1, there was talks I had at some point of trading Pittman, which might have been even worse. I'm a little more optimistic about that one. I've seen, week 1 of CH's rookie year, he comes out and looks great, puts up 20 something points, and then it's just kind of meh the rest of the year. They bring in Le'Veon Bell, or they do the same shit with Pacheco this year? Does he? I want to see the dude succeed. It's amazed me for years that that offense hasn't had a successful running back in it. You look at some of these teams with these explosive offenses with receivers and stuff in the past. Take like pretty much every team Peyton Manning was ever on. You had a very good fantasy running back on that team because you can't stack a box on them.
yeah,
You
Kansas
can't.
City, you got to go back to Kareem Hunt, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
who would probably still
Yeah.
be dominating if it weren't for his poor choices near an elevator.
In elevator elevator
Elevator,
behavior,
yeah. Um,
recreational elevator activities. Uh, but
so
yeah,
yeah,
so it's an offense where he's set up to succeed or should be, but it's just never manifested,
it's never
especially kind
clicked, right?
of Andy Reid. The reports were compared him to Brian Westbrook back with the Eagles. Like if you get Brian Westbrook in an Andy Reid offense back in the Eagles, in the prime there, that was a top 5 running back for a couple of years,
Yep.
especially in a PPR league. Um, so it's possible if that's what CEH finally turns into, then yeah, it's unfortunately the Cooper Cup trade between me and the same person 2 years in a row, and I'm gonna just stop trading to that person. Probably not. I'll still trade to anybody, but
Yeah, we know you. Draft picks are
I'll just
too juicy.
trades in general are just too fun. So
So I promise we're getting to the end. Well, but we got a couple more topics and one of them. Who the fuck are the Saints? And is it the first three-quarter Saints or is it the fourth quarter Saints? Because like that's not a bad rushing line for Jameis Winston in the first 3 quarters until you find out it's his passing line, and then the fourth quarter you're like, yeah, it's a man. Like Jameis Winston could have scored 80 points this week if he had done that fourth quarter thing a bunch.
well, that first 3 quarters, that's just Taysom Hill's 3 carries, right? That's what those yards are. I think that's
I
what
think
he had at one point.
Taysom Hill might have outran him in the first 3 quarters compared to Winston throwing the ball.
Yeah, it had, on the one drive he had 67 yards. So yeah, I think Taysom Hill outrun Jameis Winston's passing, and but I don't know. It's gonna kind of,
I
we've talked
I'm not
about.
sure it's either of those. I think it's somewhere in the middle where they're kind of a mediocre team and mediocre kind of players where they'll get some, but it ain't Drew Brees' offense anymore. I don't think.
They got the weapons are there. Even
He's got weapons.
look some stuff up. Olave looked good for a rookie. You had Landry scored good. Thomas scored
Thomas.
good. You have
Yeah,
Taysom Hill doing whatever they decide to do with Taysom Hill, and then Kamara
man,
hoping to
he's
be
dead to me.
relevant. Um, dead to you. So you for a quarterback set up for Winston, for his chance to kind of continue to try to rebound from his 30-30 season in Tampa. Um, it's possible. Now the line they cut off there is the interception line, which is where for Jameis Winston you kind
That's
of
the normal
figure
Jameis
it out.
Winston thing.
For Tampa, I'll throw for 400 yards, but you're going to get 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and hope that
Right.
that's enough to still win the game.
See what
If that's
happens.
for fantasy purposes, that's great.
It
Jameis
works out.
Winston that season was a great fantasy quarterback. It's great for his receivers. I'll take Olave. I'm sure Wells would love that version of Thomas where they just keep chucking it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think somewhere in the middle, or maybe you just spread that out over the whole game. Don't wait till the fourth quarter and make it happen then. Let's actually pretend to play the first 3 quarters of the game.
Right.
which you get the people making all the preseason arguments saying that's why the teams look rusty, which I kind of agree with that on a lot of them, especially some of your were supposed to be some favorites. The Colts were supposed to dominate, looked like shit for 3 quarters. The Saints should have won that game easier. You're beating up on they were playing Atlanta, right? So
Falcons, yeah. Marcus
you're beating up
Mariota.
on Marcus Mariota and whoever the hell actually got a pulse in that offense. While Calvin
Cordell
Ridley
Patterson
sits at
apparently
home
got a
and
pulse.
gambles. So
Yeah, I mean, as we move past Jameson, another one of the what the fucks. You look at the tight end scoring. This was the top scoring tight ends, and you just go, what in the actual fuck are we looking at? You get Kelsey where you expect him, and other than that, I looked on the list, and Dalton Schultz is about in the spot I expect. Right? Like I expect him to be about number 6 tight end, and everything else is I don't understand. Right? Like how is OJ Howard, the number 2 tight end? Taysom Hill's the tight end that's somehow running the ball. But where's obviously
the
Kittle's out.
15-point tight end with 1 reception
Right.
for
Kittle was
8
out,
yards.
so he couldn't do anything. But like Andrews is just off the list at 10 points. Waller only has 12. You're looking at the top 10 list, and 4 of them are on waivers. like and also, by the way, like only one of them got picked up, which really tells you more about how much none of us believe in this. But
I
it's
mean, two of the ones on there that are really misleading is you got the 2 Seahawks tight ends, not named Noah Fant, which is confusing as hell when Fant's supposed to be the guy. I guess part of it for Fant was he came over with Drew Lock, and then Drew Lock doesn't get the starting job, so the guy he had the relationship with isn't there. But yeah, the second and third string, as far as I know, tight ends for Seattle each go for a touchdown and make the top 10 list. Not what anyone would have predicted who you would have listened to try and explain that to you and believed them.
right.
So
No Hawkinson, no Andrews, no Pitts. Pitts was hyped up. Everyone wondered whether Mariota would give him the ball. I mean, and Mariota scored points. I know it. Those were great for me on my bench. But, um, you know, didn't get the Pitts. So you had 4 of the top 5 guys aren't even here. We're trying to
yeah,
get down to Waller
one
by like 5 or so.
one
But
one of them injured, but
yep,
you could argue with Kittle out, Ertz might even be the one that pushes that into that fifth
right.
guy kind of expected coming in, barely makes the list. Was coming in a little injured, but he catches a touchdown late, or he's not even
Save it.
there. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't have any of the Mark Andrews scores. If I had 97 catches for the week for 97 yards, and that's how my points are in fuck touchdowns.
yeah,
So
it'll be tight end's always kind of you either have one and you're happy, or you don't and you're just praying for something, and it's if
yeah, you either got a
the
quarter
guys
or
that are
you got
supposed to be
25
the I
pennies.
have ones, if you're supposed to, like I have one. Oh no, I don't. It's Kyle Pitts, it's Mark Andrews. It's Kittle who's not playing. Then that actually kind of bodes even better for going back to Tyler Wells having Kelsey, who just he's on the field. He's going to score 15, 20 points. It's going to happen. There's
Yep.
nothing other teams can do about it. He's going to get the touches.
It's all
Mahomes will
Devontae Adams. This is guaranteed, and there's
inaccurately
nothing you can
force
do
that
about it.
ball.
You know.
Mm-hmm. That was, even as Justin Jefferson's going back to me being worried about my matchup. It's like, all right, cool. All right, Justin Jefferson's starting to go off. Oh no, Kelsey's matching him point for point until that second touchdown. Well, this doesn't look. Kelsey, stop catching passes. And if you were to tell me that Mahomes is going to throw 4 or 5 touchdowns or whatever, I would have been even more worried, thinking Kelsey's getting multiples of those. And that Chiefs offense spread it around well, and kind of who needs Tyreek Hill, I guess, after 1 week. So
yeah, it's old news. So yeah, I mean, so thanks for joining me this week as we got to try this out. I'm sure I'll have you back again as our guest. I'm assuming in the future we'll probably be a little bit shorter on topics and not be an hour long unless people really like that. In which case, I'm sure that I can find people to talk about fantasy football for an hour once a week without too much struggle. So, like I said, if you have
week 1 just kind of ramps up the topics as you get to overreact to everything. You got what everyone thought coming into the season. You got 1 week to talk about it. You get through the slog of the season
I've
and
got
kind
I got text messages shitting on me for what I've said in the preseason magazine. So, I got topics.
at least
So
people read it. So
right,
you,
at
you're
least
getting
that,
you're
yeah.
getting responses, so it gets read. So
So yeah, if you have topics you want to hear about or instigate or beyond, we can do more topics. If we want to put together a roundtable where we have 3, 4 people on a call. We can do that and mix that up. I think all the feedback, whether you want it more digestible than an hour and 5 minutes, um,
in fairness, we
before
thought 20 to 30, and then I saw that we went through like the recap for the
the
week, and we're
recap
at
took
like
30, and I'm
35,
like,
and I'm like,
we're an hour. It's fine.
well, there you go.
Yep, and I was like, we'll keep it on an hour, and then I queued you up on some like Kenny Stock, and we ain't finished in an hour. All right, hour 5 will be good enough. So thank you, all of you, for listening. I'm sure all of you are asleep for the last 20 minutes, but to your spouse who's probably pissed off you were playing this as you fell asleep, I'm sorry. So have a good night, and good luck next week. Unless you're playing me, then fuck off. That's to you, Cholo. So I need another bad week out of you. It'd be great. I need wins. My division's hard, as it turns out. Much harder than I
Division of
thought.
life.
Have a good one. Later.
Later.